Hello. After growing medical marijuana for well over a year and a half now, it finally bothers me enough that I am hiding what I'm doing, that I just cannot hide it any longer. I started out growing to provide the plant's extracted oil to children with cancer that have no other treatment options, and to possibly provide one more chance at life to a child that has run out of options, as did our son Max, whose parents that are seeking it, and to help lessen the pain and suffering with the non-psychoactive substances from the plant this plant that's safer than any of the other drugs that are used for the same conditions, diseases it can and is being used to treat for children with cancer and other diseases. Researchers have and still are finding evidence that cannabinoids in very high CBD strains of marijuana has effective uses for treating children with cancer, epilepsy, and possibly a number of other diseases or disorders. It would be immoral of me in good conscience to hide what I'm doing any longer. You may have seen national news stories lately on its use for pediatric epilepsy and the research that's being done that shows it kills cancer cells in the lab. I knew both of these facts long before it made its way into the mainstream media through research of medical journals and pediatric research news sites that I subscribe to. There are so many things that I was ignorant about when it comes to this plant, and the many different compounds and drugs that can be made with it. I fully believe that we are within reach of finding a cure for the many different kinds of cancer in children, and whether it comes from compounds from this plant growing behind me or from other medicines that are being researched on, newer types of medicines that will not harm children while trying to save their lives. The what-ifs are going to haunt me for the rest of my life on if it had only come sooner for not only Max, but his buddy Evan, and for the untold number of children that have been murdered by this disease or scarred and crippled for life by cancer, epilepsy, and other conditions or diseases this medicine can effectively alleviate pain and symptoms from. It's now proven to stop children from having seizures in many of the patients that it's been used on with no harmful side effects, and will be a first-line medicine to treat epilepsy in the future, in my view. Right now there are hundreds of children lined up on waiting lists in California to get high CBD rich extracts to control their epilepsy that all other medications have failed, and the growers just cannot keep up with the demand. We know very little of the potential diseases that this medicine can be proven to treat, with the war that's been waged on it for the last half a century. Until this plant makes it into the research labs in the United States, it's going to be up to individual legal growers to provide it to patients with no other options. I can't start telling you anything about growing medical marijuana for pediatric patients without first telling you about my buddy Max. He is in his bag of ashes. He was 7. Lily is his big sister, and Jody is his mom, and we all miss him terribly each and every day. When he died on Thanksgiving Day 2010, so did a big part of us. There has not been a true happy day since the day Max died, not for I. There never will be one. Since his death, the weight and the anger and sadness just gets heavier, knowing it's continuing to happen to so many other children every day. You do not want to begin to understand the anger and rage that burns inside a parent whose child gets murdered by this monster. Max was your average kid who just wanted to play with his friends and ride his quad and grow up to be a Marine just like his dad. He thought much higher of me than I deserved, but that was okay with me, as it was good to see him happy and proud, and it wasn't going to be for a whole lot longer. He also wanted to be a motorcycle driver, or something else each time you asked him what he wanted to be when he grow up, just like any other child does. Wearing his hats now and carrying his belongings or sleeping with his bear is the only way that I can feel close to him anymore. It's important to let folks know that this can happen to any other child, even your own. There is no amount of money or social status that can keep your children safe from the random childhood cancer lottery that goes off daily. And any child, from one of President Obama's daughters to a child living on a farm in a poor part of our country, to your average suburb family, there just is no child safe. All our leaders need to better understand the devastating effects from the wrecking ball known as pediatric cancer. Max's story needs to be told, just as every child that has been murdered by pediatric cancer, and the close to 600 that will get diagnosed today, and the underestimated 200 that will die today around the globe from a disease that we can eradicate overnight in comparison to some of the feats modern medicine science has achieved. Max's death certificate says that he died of natural causes. 7-year-olds do not die naturally. For anyone that wants to say that it's just ridiculous for someone like myself to be growing marijuana in their garage to try and treat a child with a life-threatening illness, you are absolutely correct. This is something you would expect to see in a third world country and not in the most powerful nation on the planet. It should be growing in a laboratory and not in our garage. The war on this plant has caused suffering for children who could get health benefits from the extracts from high CBD strains for treatment for life-threatening diseases and lifelong crippling conditions. And I started in growing to be a part of the path and eventual paved road to new discoveries that the many cannabinoids in the plant we all know as pot or weed has and shows. Even more promise, as research in other countries have shown it to be beneficial for treating a number of physical and mental health conditions. When used, it drastically reduces the amount of narcotics and other medications that a child has to take going through cancer treatments without harming their fragile organs like their synthesized pharmaceutical counterparts often do for life, and that's a fact. Many who use cannabis oil during their treatments use no pain narcotics or anti-nausea or appetite stimulant drugs, and that's just a fact. I need someone to take over my plants, and genetics is a factor for publishing this video. I cannot physically do the work any longer and have been relying on help from others, and I'm still recovering from a shoulder surgery and have an upcoming back surgery due to being hit by a delivery van, and I'll be out of commission for months and have patients relying on medication that I'm going to need to find qualified and caring caregivers for. So I'm just plain tired, both mentally and physically. Depression sucks all the life out of a person, and there is just not a whole lot left of me. I've been wanting to keep passing on this high CBD genetics given to me by other kind growers to someone that has the time and ability and the passion to be a caregiver for pediatric patients. This has to be your only reason for wanting to grow. You only need general gardening skills and to be very thorough with following the growing schedule. I'll be able to walk you through your first couple of grow cycles, and you'll be able to take it from there with confidence. A retired farmer or someone with property that is somewhat secluded and sunny that can put up a legal grow fenced-in enclosure, has a greenhouse, would be ideal, as the sunshine is free and a plant will put out a much larger harvest in nature, and you can then even avoid an indoor winter grow. While I have adult patients and they all know that my reason for growing is to give medicine at no cost to families with children with cancer that are seeking it, I have one patient with a terminal illness, and I can assure you they would give up their medicine in a moment's notice for a child with cancer. We lost our home and most everything we had built in 20 years soon after losing Max, and since that time I've let my anger and depression overwhelm me at times and have withdrawn from not only any close friends that remain, but also from Lily and Jody at times. And while it's easy to blame it all on cancer, I just have to own up to the parts that are due to my own shortcomings. I'm so very sorry, Lily and Jody, for you having to deal with this on top of losing Max. You do not deserve any of this, and I'm so sorry to add this public attention to the nightmare of the last few years. You both deserve as normal a life as possible, and I am obsessed with no end to helping to find a way to put an end to this disease, so much that it has hurt our family even more since Max has died. I ask everyone watching this to please get involved in the fight to end cancer in children. 7 children die from cancer every single day in the United States, and 46 get diagnosed every school day in our country until we fully fund research, and every child gets the cure that he or she deserves. Being a caregiver is not only time-consuming, but it's also very costly to run the lights to grow at an average cost of $400 to $500 a month. The equipment that I'm running, many other factors, soil, supplies that aren't figured in, and we just can no longer afford it. It's time to admit it. It takes a large quantity of bud or flowers from several marijuana plants to make a course of oil for an 80-pound patient that has to be extracted from the harvested plant. I highly doubt that most parents that do procure this extract through the black market at a cost of thousands of dollars get true high-grade CBD-rich oil without contaminants from pesticides. Some are likely getting watered-down hash oil that will do nothing but get their child high, as drug dealers are not known to have a conscience. There are very few growers out there that even have CBD-rich strains, as it took me nearly 9 months to find and establish a few strains. Another reason for this video is to stop any speculation among neighbors, family, and friends who have become aware that I grow medical marijuana. I've kept it low profile for as long as possible for our family's safety and privacy, but it's just not practical to do anymore. For one thing, parents looking for this type of medicine need to be educated on what specifically in cannabis oil they need to find, and if this is something they choose to add to their child's protocol. We as a society and government are not providing adequate funding for pediatric cancer research to protect our most precious citizens, our children. And so here we are. The money we have spent on the drug war against this plant most certainly would have added up to the funds necessary to find the cause, a cure for cancer in children. Our country made a critical error when deciding to wage a war on this plant, and we also failed miserably at eradicating it from within our borders. The reason why, in my view, is because it's just not the drug that it has been made out to be. Surely it does get abused by some, if not many, but that is no reason to withhold it from just so many that it can help alleviate suffering or give a chance at life to, especially a child. Here's a whole bunch of irony for you. When medical marijuana was first proposed on the ballot in Michigan, I knew right away I wanted to be a grower, as I was an avid gardener and knew many people who used marijuana. I was a self-employed building contractor and had plenty of free time, and we had a beautiful greenhouse, so I figured I would be perfect as a grower, as I was not a marijuana user and had never cared for the drug. Alcohol was my poison. I had just started a few test plants from just bag seed I got from a fellow poker player just prior to Max developing cancer. And I was good at it right from the start. And Max got sick and our world turned upside down as the nightmare began. They never got watered again from the day he went into the emergency room, and I tossed him out first time I came home from the hospital and never gave it another thought throughout his entire battle with cancer. They surely were not CBD-rich strains like what's growing behind me, and I knew nothing of the plant at that time, nor did I have a clue that it was already being used to treat some cancer patients for pain and other conditions. I just thought people used it like alcohol, and it helped some people who had glaucoma and problems with nausea from chemotherapy. Back then I judged many, if not most of the people I knew as just potheads who used marijuana, as many in our society still do. The whole time I was abusing alcohol and was causing more harm to my body and our family as a whole by my actions due to drinking than what your average marijuana user does, in my view, at this time while looking back. There are law enforcement following customers home from hydroponic stores where they purchase their grow supplies to later serve warrants and raid their legal grow setups that are not only not harming anyone, but they're easing the suffering of patients, many who have cancer. In a recent instance in the news, the authorities raided 2 retired ex-CIA agents who were just growing zucchini in their basement, and that's very concerning to me. So I have been seeing a trend of some patients, as well as parents of children with cancer, that are giving their child medical marijuana oil extracts on social networks and calling it a cure for cancer, and not stating accurately that the child or patient has had standard protocol radiation and chemotherapy. There is no completed study showing medical marijuana does anything beyond help patients with the pain and related symptoms of cancer and its treatment protocols, in my view. To state otherwise is misrepresentation of the facts and risks other children's lives that are better suited for proven traditional treatment protocols to treat their cancer. Because of society's rules, I feel like I'm doing something wrong by trying to do this quietly and privately. Anytime that you have to hide something, it just feels wrong, and this shouldn't. I started extensively researching this after Max died, and I see promise in using medical marijuana for a number of patients. and I wanted to see firsthand how effective it is. All of the strains that I am now cloning and growing are high in cannabidiol, which is CBD for short, and it's just one of the many cannabinoids found in the cannabis plant. Cannabidiol is non-psychoactive and doesn't get a patient high, and has more medical uses than THC, including epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, spasms, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, and nausea. Scientifically, it has been shown to relieve convulsions, inflammation, anxiety, and nausea, as well as inhibit cancer cell growth in the lab. Recent studies have shown cannabidiol to be as effective as atypical antipsychotics in treating schizophrenia. Studies have also shown that it relieves symptoms of Parkinson's disease. We are finding out more and more every day on the diseases this medicine can treat, and our government needs to act fast to remove it from the Schedule I category so it can be studied properly and made readily available to those who are dying and suffering from life-threatening or lifelong illnesses. America, we were just wrong about this plant. And as early as 2007, it was reported that high CBD oil extracts reduces the growth of aggressive human breast cancer cells in vitro and reduces their invasiveness. Researchers are starting to see preliminary studies in mice that indicating it may stop cancer tumors from metastasizing or growing after the cancer is in remission. And this is where I feel that it might have helped our son Max when his cancer was under control and in partial remission. Cannabinoids indeed kills cancer cells in the lab, and that now needs to be found out if it does the same in the human body. For years, growers have been breeding this plant to have a higher THC content to get the user higher. There are now many, as well as I, trying to do the opposite, and it's been my goal and others to crossing strains and breeding to get the THC level lower and the CBD content higher. In Israel, they have bred a strain that has no detectable THC for all practical purposes, and they need to share that genetics. Anyone and everyone needs to share any strains that can help people, especially children who are dying. Nobody should put profit before helping a suffering patient. Recreational users are not interested in the marijuana that I am dedicated to growing, and that is one of the problems of why patients cannot locate high CBD strains or medicine without much of a demand for it in the past. The recreational demand for the high THC strains, so patients are forced to use medicine with more THC than what they need or what they seek. To get a true therapeutic dose for attempting to treat cancer, this medicine has to be taken orally and not smoked. Strains of this plant that has a high THC level are still necessary for patients who just cannot get pain relief or have a high tolerance for cannabinoids, or for severe chronic pain and anxiety and other medical conditions. It's just not the plant that I want to focus on. If there is indeed any hope that medical marijuana can help with slowing or stopping cancer, I feel it's only going to be successful with strains that have the proper CBD and THC ratios. All I want is to be able to help children dying of cancer so that any family seeking medical marijuana can have safe, legal access to quality cannabis extracts for their children without going to the black market and not knowing what they're giving their child, or whether it's safe and free of pesticides and harmful chemicals. There are growers out there that know way more about what they're doing than I do, and I'm asking for advice and help and assistance from you, and asking other growers to designate one or more of the plants in each of your grows to a high CBD strain and be willing to grow within guidelines for cancer patients to grow as organically as possible without spraying harmful pesticides. Until our government is doing the proper research to give every child the chance they deserve, I just don't see any way around volunteers doing it until then. I don't wish to give any parent false hope and want to make that very clear. The day that a child diagnosed with DIPG or a cancer that's similar to our son's that has no 5 years survival chance, uses only cannabis to treat the cancer and goes into remission, uses the oil made from this plant while they're in remission, and it gives them years of life with no permanent side effects from the treatment, I only consider it useful for the side effects of the cancer treatments. Just want to make that very clear. It's written into Michigan law that insurance companies are exempt from having to reimburse for medical marijuana even if 2 doctors recommends it, as is the law for pediatric patients. So you can see how power and greed is playing into the laws governing the growing of this plant. We were not even aware that Max qualified for the use of medical marijuana as part of his treatment protocol. He could have eaten a brownie or a cookie that was baked with the proper dosage of cannabis extracts with coconut oil for his weight, to treat his pain and nausea and anxiety, as well as the anger from the steroids to keep his brain swelling down due to the cancer growing in his brain and in his spine. It would have certainly also helped with his appetite during chemo and radiation, and given the choice of a handful of pills or a cookie, it would have been an easy choice for Max. Max's doctor, in my opinion, wouldn't have went to the tumor board with the idea to begin with, as he hasn't answered any of my phone calls or emails regarding this matter to offer it to other patients as a treatment option at Max's hospital. I just can't see how you cannot offer this to someone for their child that is dying when there are no other options available. All pediatric oncologists need to research this medicine and look at it objectively without regard to the stigma that's attached to this plant. If anyone is a friend of any cannabis activist, I ask that you please reach out to them. Post this video on any page that you can think of that it may get noticed by the media or celebrities that speak openly about their cannabis use. Anyone from Willie Nelson, Bill Maher, or Snoop Dogg. Anyone with a loud voice to get the word out to them that they can join in this cause and share a part of their garden and harvest to help sick children. If you know someone from the news media, I would be eager to talk more of this to local and national news outlets. And I ask you to please subscribe to Max's YouTube channel and watch his other videos of the celebration of his life. Share this with your friends to spark public discussions on this possible life-saving medicine. Please also join Gold to the Max on Facebook for following this discussion. I don't expect everyone to support this or endorse what I'm doing, but just please think long and hard before criticizing it. If you had a child with no treatment options to save their life, you would seek out anything that could potentially help. Right now I have 2 families who want medical marijuana extracts as an option for their child in case of relapse, and I'm guessing after this video is public there will be others, and I am nowhere near confident that I can give them the best medicine available, not alone. And that is probably one of the main reasons for this video. I need other growers willing to help out if need be. Nothing should be uncomfortable to discuss when it comes to children dying, especially from a disease that we know that we could stop with proper funding and research. I don't get to make any more blanket tents with my buddy, and I'll wonder for the rest of my life if this couldn't have helped him in his fight against cancer. I'm not making any claims. I want to reiterate that and peddling false hope. It's going to take time before we find out if this can extend or help save the life of any children who have cancer. In Israel and a few other countries that are 10 years ahead of us, it's already proven to be effective in treating many of the symptoms and pain from cancer, and that's a given, and it's not up for debate any longer. This changes nothing on my support for legitimate pediatric cancer foundations, and we will continue to raise funds for foundations seeking to end 7 children dying daily and 46 getting diagnosed each school day in our country. Worldwide, the numbers are larger, with 200 children dying from cancer every day and nearly 600 getting diagnosed with some form of cancer. I'm doing this alongside our continued support for the many great organizations trying to put an end to pediatric cancer. I follow all of Michigan's guidelines to adhere to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act while still having to decipher the constant changes and the rights that our state government is eroding, even though the people of Michigan have spoken. Some of the parts of the laws that offer me little to no protection as a grower or caregiver, as well as a registered and qualified patient. I only want to be able to give an option that was not available to Max. This is a simple case of children being last in line once again when it comes to getting medicines that are first made available to adults. I was not a recreational user growing up and had only tried marijuana a handful of times and just never took a liking to it. Prior to being a grower, caregiver, patient, and still do not, and I consider it a medicine to only be used if necessary. I'll go into just a bit of my own findings on how the extracts from just the foliage, the leaves, and trimmings from this plant I'm growing has helped with the pain from shoulder surgery and severe back pain resulting from an auto accident. It's helped when the narcotics for pain would just no longer cover the pain anymore after surgery when I was at home and didn't need to drive. And at times I would also forget and didn't need but half the pain narcotics when I was using cannabis oil. It also took away any cravings that I had for alcohol after being a functioning alcoholic, both before Max getting cancer, but especially after him dying. I tried to use alcohol to numb the pain from losing Max, but transitioned into trying to drink myself to death. Alcohol just makes depression worse. Ever since stopping the use of cannabis extracts, I went back to drinking and have no urge to and never will. It was that effective for me. I stopped using the plant's extracts due to me just being THC intolerant, as it just clouded my mind too much and impaired my memory more than I could tolerate to carry out my day-to-day duties. So I stopped using it after a short while. I was just using mainly the extracts and baked goods. I'm going to wait until this high CBD strain's currently growing harvest and may try it again to see if it'll help me with some just at times debilitating depression and the back pain. I'm confident it can help and leave me able to function and go about my daily activities as best I can. I have no problem stating publicly that depression from losing Max has consumed me, and there are few that can stand to be around me any longer. Who wants to hang out with someone so miserable that only talks of cancer in children? If there is not enough this medicine at harvest for me to try it due to demand, it won't bother me a bit to wait till a future harvest when the dispensaries are back open. I'm not a pothead and will guarantee you that any one of our last few presidents and a portion of the leaders in our government have smoked more marijuana than I've ever ingested. I can also tell you that on my worst day of depression, when I just could care less, if I wake up the next day, I could use a small amount of a sativa dominant strain with just a medium level of THC, and the anger and sadness is lifted to a manageable level within minutes. I could laugh and interact with Lily and have my pain manageable. The problem is I would then be homebound for the next 8 to 12 hours, as I would be too impaired to drive, which is no different than alcohol, but I was well aware of it. Unlike alcohol, where as many think they're fine after a few drinks, when of course we're not. So the medicine I currently have just is little use to me with the higher levels of THC from the plants that I've grown in the past. I just couldn't build up a tolerance to the THC. I can't afford to make critical errors with settings on the equipment or mislabeling something. I need all of the memory available that I have to ensure that I don't kill off a room full of plants. A simple error when a patient of mine or a family with a child will be seeking this medicine. Most antidepressants take weeks to begin to work, if at all, in my experience, and this medicine works safely and instantly, so I do at least have hope that with the lower THC strains growing behind me, that if my depression gets to the worst of me again, I won't have to wait weeks in misery, doctor visits, trips to the pharmacy, co-pays, risks of seizure, death, dry mouth, and constipation, and the long list of side effects from the doctor's drugs that I always hated, that stripped away every parts of me that just makes me me, just to try and take away the sadness that's inside of me. If need be in the future, I'll just eat a breakfast roll made from coconut oil and not drive for the weekend, and life will feel better in an hour. That's my limited experience with this medicine. I wouldn't even consider having the upcoming back surgery without having the extracts available to help me through the pain and depression that's sure to follow. It won't solve all of my problems, but it'll be a tool to help me in the worst of times. It does bother me that I have to pay for it. Allstate doesn't. It's their driver who hit me, and I have Allstate too, just like their commercials. You're just not being honest in your commercials, Allstate. Your company has done nothing but add stress and frustration since my injury, and leaves us with bills that you're slow to pay. That's not in good hands as your commercials. Instead, we got the mayhem commercials. That is nothing in comparison to how Max's insurance companies left him to fight on his own with a lifetime, few $1,000,000 payment cap that was likely used up before he even had stem cell transplant. So I just don't have much good to say about the insurance industry, to say the least. At least now the laws have changed, and children with cancer don't have lifetime caps any longer for their medical treatments that are going to last a lifetime to repair the fragile bodies of the children from the brutal treatments they receive going through cancer treatments. Growing this plant for pediatric use is different than growing for adults. Anything that you spray on the plant or feed it for nutrients can and will likely end up in the finished extract. The medicine needs to be tested for quality, as well as CBD, THC, and other compounds. You cannot risk giving any toxins or the extracts that aren't handled as food grade, because a child's immune system is already compromised when they're in treatment for cancer. This plant, especially the high CBD strains I'm growing, are safer than aspirin in many regards, and that is no exaggeration by any means. You cannot overdose on any strain of marijuana, period. You cannot harm your organs either. Short-term memory is the only side effect that is bothersome to me, as well as can make a person using it quite thirsty, in my case, but drinking water beforehand, preparing, takes care of that. I have tried, like I said, most every kind of antidepressant, and I have never had one work as fast and last as long as what's growing right here in our garage. I know many adults that are still hiding in the shadows and that are using this drug to cope with physical and mental problems, and if everyone who does use it would speak up, perhaps the stigma to this plant wouldn't be so negative. If you're a child or a young person and happen to be watching this, please, I beg of you to stay away from both alcohol and marijuana, as well as all drugs. They're just not necessary to have fun in life, and likely cause you more problems than any good times that you'll have from them. There is just no reason to take the risk. The two primary strains that I'm growing and cloning that I acquired of the high CBD strains are tested at 6.8 CBD and a THC content of 2.1. The second one is 7.8 CBD and 5.2 THC, which is considered more of a 1-to-1 ratio. I also have a third strain that has been known to put out some high CBD medicine, but it's untested until it's harvested. Mike, if you're watching this, I can't thank you enough for your kindness in giving me these high CBD strains. Recently, under Michigan's current law, they have outlawed growers, or ruled that they can't share strains, and that is harming patients. This and many other parts of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act needs to be addressed immediately. I have plenty more to say about cancer in children, but I went on long enough. This video is long enough, so I may continue on at a later date. Please get involved with a legitimate pediatric cancer research foundation and do your part. I'm sorry, Sir Maxwell Kincaid Nunn the Great, that I couldn't find out about this when it might have been able to help you, buddy. Dear Mr. President Obama, members of our government, as well as the Drug Enforcement Agency, please address the problem of pediatric cancer and put it to the top of the list of things that we need to get done. I just ask everyone watching to get involved and do anything that you can. It doesn't take a whole lot of money or time to make a big impact in a child's life. Do your part to stop childhood cancer. Thank you.